Peace and blessings. We're going to deep dive right into this. This post is called The Smoke. We'll start with an analogy. If you have a smoke-filled room, if you were in a smoke-filled room and you're a non-smoker and you're watching those smoking, the people smoking, it's very easy to say, look, they're killing themselves, taking in all that smoke and all the consequences that come with smoking. Not realizing that as a non-smoker, you being in that room, you're also taking in smoke. And studies have shown that secondhand smoke is as deadly as being a smoker itself. And not until you get into an atmosphere where you're clear of smoke do you realize how much it has permeated your whole being, like your clothes and probably your breath, everything within you and on you smells smoky. So I started with this analogy because I'm using smoke and smoking as an analogy for racism. And before I deep dive into racism, I want to give a definition. And I liked what I did in my last post as it relates to reading the definition versus giving you the functional definition. I want to let you know exactly how I'm using the term. So pardon my look away on my laptop this time. So for ism, the definition for ism is a distinctive practice, system, or philosophy, typically a political ideology or an artistic movement. So for our purposes, or for the purposes of this post, I'm using ism as it relates to, as I said, racism or structure, as we say, systemic racism. Now, bringing it back to the analogy, the smoke in itself is the racism. And those who are smoking are those who are putting their value system, which is that of a smoker, and affecting everyone in the room or the smoke-filled room, or in this case, the country, the United States of America. And yes, racism is permeating, is prevalent throughout the world, but I want to focus on the United States at this moment. So again, racism is the smoke. The smokers are those who have the mechanism or the system to then affect everyone in the room, or in this case, America. So they're blowing the smoke out and it's permeating everyone. And being more specific, these smokers or these people, the value system of those, and we're going to say the Europeans, because they developed the system and they're the ones who are actually affecting people of color, are actually blowing the smoke into the faces. So it's not even blowing it around the room. They're blowing it directly into the faces of the individuals who are non-smokers. And the non-smokers will be the people of color. All right, so we can hold that down. And not until, so as we are grappling and talking about how do we address this racial problem that has been here since the inception of the formalization of this country, and even prior to it being formal. And we're talking about addressing centuries of chattel slavery and that mindset that went with it, which is still part of the racism, is part of the smoke. How do we address that? By being within the smoke-filled room itself. And I'm going back and forth on purpose because it's good exercise in how to critically think and being able to separate, as well as see the whole, as well as see the specific, and put it back together and take it apart as we address. So the reason one of the main reasons I used the smoke-filled room analogy is because in my conversations with people, be it those who are telling me their stories as they've talked to others who may not look like them, people of color talking to those who are European and trying to address racism. And as I'm listening to talk shows, be it on the conservative stations as well as the so-called conservative stations and the so-called progressive stations or liberal stations. It's that conversation where those who are of European descent, be it in my viewing, that they're like, I'm not racist. I didn't own any slaves. I don't treat people of color bad, and all of that things that you've heard before. And what I've said to those, I would ask a simple question, not just the people I'm talking about who I've seen on TV, but when I'm engaging people in a conversation, if they may have said that to me, or if people are sharing with me their stories, I said the question I would ask people, and I've had asked people, is how did you stop? And they look at me like, what do you mean, how did I stop? I was never that way. So then as I'm asking the question, I'm actually thinking of the smoke-filled room, which then prompted me to say, you know what, I need to put a post on this. Meaning, going back to the smoke-filled room, not until the non-smoker steps outside of the smoke-filled room do they realize how much smoke is on them and has affected, is permeating their beings. Conversely, not until those who are either self-described, prescribed racists or bigots or haters of other people just because of their skin color or gender, that's another ism for another time. Not until they step outside of that smoke-filled room or the racist mechanism into one that is not, would they realize that how much of their ways and actions help to promote and as well as been benefactors of racism. So we're going to pause and I'm going to let that marinate for a second. So to take it even further, what I mean by that is it's very difficult to address a situation like this when you're actually still immersed in it. First, you have to acknowledge that you're in it. And if you're a European, that you are benefiting from it, even if you do not subscribe to it or if you don't practice it in terms of oppressing others outwardly. But to address it and to overcome it and to come up out of it, from that point, if you are a European, you have to say, I am benefiting from it because I may not be the heavy smoker like the overt racist who burns crosses and marches and spews the words and do everything in their power to subjugate others to this racist value system or bigoted value system. But you are smoking nevertheless. One, so instead of smoking 10 packs of cigarettes a day or multiple packs of cigarettes, you smoke a cigarette a day or a pack of cigarette a day. Or if that doesn't work for you because you're like, Greg, I'm not a smoker. Instead of having the smoke blown directly in your face like the people of color are getting, they're blowing it around you. So you're not getting the effects of the direct smoke in your face. So you're getting a benefit from that because you look like the overt bigot who is European. Thus, they're able to put their value system on others, and that's racism. That's systemic racism, just in case people don't realize it, that all of us can be bigots, but in this country, African Americans and other people of color cannot be racist because we all can be bigots, but we don't have the value, we don't have this mechanism, this systemic mechanism to put our values in this country to affect the everyday lives of others who, be it the European or others, and say, we're going to affect you and we're going to do things that affect your nine major people activities, meaning entertainment, economics, education, labor, law, sex, religion, politics, and war. We don't have that mechanism to put our value system on others like that versus the European. And that's the essence of racism in this country. So, meaning, going back to the smoke-filled room analogy, the smoke, the cigarettes, is the tool or the tools, or it could be the mechanism of the nine major people activities, inhale and blowing this value system of the European onto others. And Those who are, quote, getting the privilege, when they say white privilege, it's like, I don't get white privilege, so I'm balk against that. But the privilege is that you're not getting the smoke in your face. You're being beneficiaries of not getting direct smoke or the direct racism, and you're benefiting with your health, as well as that health can be the analogy of the 9 major people activities. So you're able to get the loans, home loans, mortgage loans, other loans. You're able to buy property. You're able to do the things that are in the 9 major people activities based upon what you bring to the table, which is rightfully so. You're able to say, hey, look, here's my portfolio. This is how much wages I make. This is my credit score, et cetera, et cetera. And because of that, you're able to secure things based upon your worth versus others who, because of the system and the value system of racism, may have the same or similar qualifications and portfolio to obtain assets, which would then grow wealth for them and generations of their families subsequent to them. They're denied that, and all because of the color of their skin. That's the point I'm making in reference to that. So how do we come up out of it? First, we need to acknowledge it, because some may point out, well, there's this black person over here, quote, African American, they're succeeding, so on and so forth. And there are individuals, and there are a few numbers that are. But when you're analyzing people, or mass of people, or group of people, you don't base it on the few that make it. You base it upon the mass. That's how you do your correct analysis. So that's a misnomer. And as my brothers and sisters in the nation of gods and earth will tell you, that's that trigonology. So how do we come about of it? Because also there are those within the people of color group was like, you know what? For whatever reason, I want my life to be easier. So they choose to side with those who are the smokers. So they'll pick up a cigarette and blow it back into the faces of their own people also. And you will see that because they want for whatever reason. So I'm not going to disparage them. I'm just going to point it out as a matter of fact. So it's not just solely Europeans who are subjecting people of color to the racism and bigotry. You have those within who are members of the groups that are being oppressed, who choose to have a better life, and they made peace with themselves, and they're doing that also. So it's a comprehensive, all-encompassing thing. So circling back to, like I said, how do we come about of it? How we come about of it, since there's this push since George Floyd killing, that we want to address this. We want to make America great the way that the tenets of the founding fathers have stated in the Constitution and other writings. To do that, simply you must tell the truth and own the truth. Be it if you are one that want to change from being a European who is overtly racist, and now you're seeing the light and saying, look, the world needs to be better, to own it and then be educated from it. How do you get educated from it? You don't go and tell those people who are being oppressed by it, who are experiencing it, this is what I think you should do. No, you listen. How can you ask the question, how can I help? And then you go from there. One way, and then if you are one who is, quote, receiving white privilege, you ask the same question, how can I help? Because that smoke, meaning an analogy for racism, is prevalent. It's permeating. It's all within your very being, because that's what we've all grew into. We were born into this, and we're in it. So in order to address it and actually see it, you need to be outside of that atmosphere. And if you're like, well, what atmosphere is there that's clear from it? That's a great question. So if there isn't any, then what we need to do is to do the works to make our atmosphere now clear of smoke. And part of making it clear of smoke is truth. What's the truth? Teach the truth on actual things that happen. Changing a value system. How do you change a value system? You speak on the benefits, not the benefits, you speak on the contributions of all people who have made this country great. Because we've been taught, like I said, 9 major people activities, one being education. We've been miseducated to think that the European have primarily did all great things of advancement, and specifically the African Americans were saved from being savages in the continent of Africa and brought over here. And yeah, we've treated them bad, but they were one step from and close to being cannibals. So we actually taught them Christianity and blah, 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 when that's not true. So you embrace the truth and you speak the truth. So if you're a European, like I have friends of mine who are European, like, what do I do? Well, when you're amongst your group and you start hearing lies that you know that are outlaw lies, you call people on it. Now, when you do that, understand you may lose people. People that you thought were your friends may not be your friends anymore. You need to understand that. And if you are running up on black people like, I need to do this, I need to do that, you may get the side eye like, what are you doing? So understand it's a road. This is where we're at. So, but you have to determine if it's worthwhile for you to make the world better. Is it worthwhile? Will you be able to sleep at night if you know you didn't do the right thing? As African Americans and other people of color, you embrace the truth. We listen also, because the smoke is affecting all of us in various degrees. So as African Americans, we need to listen to other people too. Don't have to agree either way, but you listen to find out what point of view, where they're coming from. And from that point of view, now we can sit and say, let's get together on the things that we hold dear. What common cause what are we connecting in commonly? And in my travels, my father was in the Army. So we traveled and lived in different parts of the country and the world, and I've traveled. So I say that to say, what has been common amongst people who don't look like me and those who look like me but have different upbringings is that generally we want the same thing. We want to be treated justly. We want to uh, be able to earn what we are worth without anyone impeding me. Period. So that's what we need to do. Hotep, one love, laugh a lot, Wakanda forever. Vitamin D, of course.